All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Allison Lindsey. For those of you who don't know me, I am a mental health specialist with the Santa Barbara County SELPA, and my primary role is to consult in our programs for students with emotional disturbance. So we have programs called the therapeutic learning programs that through the IEP process, based on the student's individual needs, they may go into that placement, which is the most restrictive placement we have on our continuum of mental health services within our county for students with mental health needs. We have 19 programs across the county, ranging in age from elementary students up through high school students. And my colleague and I, Dr. Rosie Bucio, create the program that we run in those classrooms. It's called the GROW program. So we produce the materials for that and do a lot of the staff consultation and training as well. So that is my primary role. I also do professional development, and now I'm getting more proficient at Zoom, even though hopefully today it'll be relatively seamless, but I will be showing you videos. So you'll have to bear with me a little bit when I change my screen when I'm sharing it. Throughout this professional development today, we only have, it looks like 11 people today. So we have a relatively small group. So I always, in all of my PDs, want to encourage participation as much as possible. It's nice for me that I don't have to be talking the whole time, and it's nice for you guys to be able to hear from each other. So today, feel free, because we're a small group, to unmute your microphone at any time and share verbally and speak, and I'll pause and allow for us to do that. You can also, if you feel more comfortable, type into the chat box, and I'll check the chat box every 2 or 3 slides or so, just to make sure I'm not missing anything, or I'm answering any questions as we go through. I think that about covers things. As Brian said, we are recording this, so just an FYI, because we are a small group today too, and because we're practicing self-care, you may get out a little bit early today. So hopefully you'll get a chance to practice some of the things that we talk about. So with all that said, on this slide, my contact information is here. So should you at any point have any questions or just want to reach out, please do so. You can always email me, call, or text me on my cell phone number too. So you can always refer back to that should you need it in the future. All right, and now we will just go ahead and get started. So here's a list of our learning objectives for today. We're going to be talking about something that is obviously the elephant in the room that we are not going to skip over, is right now the timing of COVID-19. So self-care is more important now than it ever has been, and hoping that it's going to become just a part of our everyday practice as educators, and it's going to be valued by administrators as well, the need not just now during this extremely stressful time, but all the time. We're going to talk about some definitions of key terms related to self-care, some signs or symptoms of that you or somebody else may be suffering, and the importance of showing up for yourself and how to do that. And then we're also going to talk about what self-care looks like when we are back in school. So right now we're going to be really focusing a bit on what it can look like during this time that we're all working remotely, at least most of us are. Today I'm actually in my office. I came in for the first time today. There's nobody else here. Normally I'm doing these professional developments from my house, which is a little nicer actually, because you can hear the birds chirping, and it's perfect for the self-care. But today I have a few back-to-back trainings, so I thought that I would just do it from the office today. So sorry, you won't hear the birds chirping in the background today. I'm going to start us off with just a grounding activity. So this is going to be kind of a guided meditation. This is a video I found for free on YouTube. It's a little over 5 minutes of just a mindfulness activity where we can listen to somebody walk us through, and just, you're all at home, so get comfortable. Nobody can see you. So this is actually the perfect opportunity to practice this, and know that there's tons of these type of videos on YouTube for free that you can just look up. I just searched for guided meditation and found a couple. We're going to be doing one more later. So as you're doing it, just try to relax as much as possible. And then afterwards, we'll check in on what the experience was like for you. So hang in there with me for just a minute as I share, as I switch my screen here. Okay, everybody, here we go.
5-minute anxiety reduction. Sit or lay comfortably, resting your hands on your legs or at your sides. Begin to focus your attention on your breathing, feeling your chest move gently inward and outward. Your mind may be racing with uncomfortable or fearful thoughts, and that's okay. Just continue to breathe naturally and effortlessly. Feel the air flow gently in and out of your nostrils, and feel a soothing lightness throughout your body, flowing from the top of your head all the way down to the tips of your toes, gently and effortlessly. As you slowly and gradually create this awareness, repeat after me, either out loud or in your mind, each time counting down from 5 to 1 and stating stillness, awareness after each number. Repeating after me. 5, stillness, awareness. 4, stillness, awareness. 3, stillness, awareness. 2, stillness, awareness. 1, stillness, awareness. Remember, you are not these unpleasant feelings. You have overcome them in the past, and you will rise above them again, ever changing. If the feelings stay with you for some time, it's okay. Time and awareness will allow it to fade. Time and awareness will allow it to fade. And now, one last time, nice and slowly, repeating this time, calm and present. 5, calm and present. 4, calm and present. 3, calm and present. 2, calm and present. 1, calm and present. Sit with your feelings, whatever they are, at this moment for just a few more moments. Feel the air moving slowly in and out, your chest moving gently up and down, and effortlessly you become aware. Peace will return. You're becoming aware again and again. Remain in stillness. and allow yourself to let go.
All right, everybody, I'm going to bring us back here to our presentation. Okay. So what was that like for you guys? Feel free to unmute and share, or you can type into the chat box. What was that experience like for you? Was it comfortable, uncomfortable? Did you notice some judgments coming into your head? Um, is there something you liked about the video, didn't like about the video? Did you notice like your heart beating faster or slower?
I liked how simple it was,
Mm-hmm.
easy, to remember to do another time.
Yeah.
And being at home and my teenage daughter in the next room, I was, really challenged to stay even with headphones.
In the moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's on her computer, to
Right.
Zoom schoolwork or whatever.
Right.
But I got into it. It was a struggle.
Yeah, I hear you. I noticed in the beginning too, my heart was pounding really fast. It almost was just hard to get into it in the beginning for me this time, but
Yeah.
try to just pay attention to the breathing and slowly start to relax a little bit. But I'm also free of distractions right now because I'm in the office by myself. So it makes it a little easier to do.
Yeah.
Rebecca, you're saying you felt restless. Yeah, it's understandable. It's hard when our mind is constantly racing and we're moving, and then all of a sudden we're asked to sit still and be present. So it's understandable to feel restless. Jamie, it was a new experience. You didn't prefer the man's voice. I've gotten that feedback from a few people about his voice. Some people really like it and some people don't. So this is a good lesson in self-care, that what works for somebody doesn't necessarily work for somebody else. So we're going to do another one later in the training. So we'll see if that's a different experience for you. It's a female voice and I wonder what that's going to be like. So it's good to know what you like and what you don't like. So that way, if you do plan on trying a mindfulness practice or a meditation, then you know kind of what platforms to use and what works best for you. Yeah, maybe if it was a female or male with a softer voice, absolutely. Too raspy. You liked it, yeah. So that's just a good lesson, and that some people we all prefer different things. We're all individuals, so it doesn't mean that one's better or worse. It just means that one thing resonates you for whatever reason versus something else. So that's why it's good to try a bunch of different things and see what works. It's also nice because there's so many different apps out there that you could use for meditation or mindfulness. So it's nice if you're able to do like a trial so that you can see if you like them. I use the Calm app personally, and I really like it because there's a bunch of different options you can choose from. So if you prefer a female voice or a male voice, there's a lot of different types, people with different accents. So that's kind of nice to have that. You had a trash truck out front. Yeah, that makes it a little hard. I think that's Cindy. And you have one that you normally listen to with a British accent. Yeah, so sometimes people think a British accent can be soothing. So figuring out what works for you. Well, now that we've tried that, we're all in the space together now. I'm going to go through a list of these 20 mental health wellness tips for quarantine. This is not something that I can take credit for developing. This was actually developed by a clinical psychologist who she didn't take credit for it. So I can't give you her name, but I have a more expanded version of this that has descriptions of each of these, which I'm just going to kind of verbally go over with you right now. So if you do want that expanded list after this training, please do email me or shoot me a text message with your contact information and I'll get it to you. A lot of people have really liked this, and I know one of you just said that you have a teenage daughter in the next room. A lot of people have said, God, I need to share this with my teenager. So please do reach out if you would like it and want to share it with other people. All right. So the first one of these wellness tips during this time of COVID-19 is, as much as possible, to stick with a routine. So because things are so extraordinary right now, we can get out of routine pretty easily. We're used to getting up if we're going into the school or wherever we're working. We're used to getting up around the same time every day, taking a shower, getting ready, getting our coffee, whatever a normal morning routine is. We have to be somewhere at a certain time typically. Right now, that looks a little different. We may need to be somewhere at a certain time on Zoom, or some other platform. However, we may not need to take a shower. We may not need to get ready. We may not stick with that same routine. And we all thrive on routine. The brain thrives on routine and predictability. So, as much as possible, if you can try to stick with a routine during this time, it's best for our mental health, to try to get up at the same time and go to bed at the same time. The second one is dress for the social life you want, not the social life you have. I know I've been joking with my sister recently. She has two little kids, and I also have two little kids. And she said she has her day sweats and her night sweats that she keeps changing in and out of. Um, and I've also been just wearing much more comfortable clothes, than I normally do, which is fine. However, if we're working on sticking with the routine, taking our shower in the morning, getting ready, putting on some clothes that just make you feel like yourself. The more that we can feel like ourselves in a time we have no control over a lot of things that are happening right now. If we can control that and feel more like ourselves, then it does help our mental health on a daily basis. It's just really amazing how dress can actually impact your mood. Third one is get out once a day for at least 30 minutes. So we may be in front of our computers a lot more than we normally are. So making sure that we're getting up, we're moving. Ideally, we're doing that outside and getting some fresh air. We're so lucky, and this kind of ties into this next one, number 4, which is to find some time to move in the day, again, for at least 30 minutes. So if you're able to go outside, I mean, I'm just so grateful that we don't live in a city, where this would be much more difficult to do. Here on the Central Coast, there's so much open space. There's so many trails. Our beaches are still open. I know the governor was speaking about closing the beaches, which looks like he just did in Orange County, but not in our area. So if you are able at some point in the day, it may not be going to the beach or going for a hike, but at least just going outside and walking outside, it does wonders for us. So getting outside at least for 30 minutes. Right now, I've been taking my lunches outside, which has been so nice, just to make sure that I get that fresh air and sunshine, and then go back inside for the rest of the Zoom meetings and phone calls. But it does do us wonders. And then again, the trying to move each day. So even if that's a YouTube video, a yoga video, there's even videos that have walking in place. I know there's a woman named Jessica Smith that I've used in the past. She has a YouTube channel, and she has a lot of just walking in place videos, but she switches it up so you're not just kind of marching in place, but you're moving in different directions, and it's just nice to move your body. So trying to do that for at least 30 minutes a day. Another one, the 5th one, so reaching out to others. And again, you guessed it, for at least 30 minutes a day. So connecting during this time where we're all social distancing, it takes a toll. We are, as human beings, we thrive on connection. We're wired for connection. And we may have our immediate family members or other people that we're close to that we're seeing on a regular basis and every day, all day. However, we're not seeing our colleagues that we're used to seeing every day. We're not seeing our friends, other extended family members, perhaps. And that takes a toll on us. And our emotional well-being. So making that effort, if you haven't already, to reach out to those people, whether it's via the phone, FaceTime, Zoom, whatever it is, trying to do that for at least 30 minutes a day to touch base and have those conversations and make those connections, is so important. I know I recently just got back in touch. I think a lot of this time that we're having one of my friends was saying that it brought up a lot of memories for her that she just hasn't been thinking about of her past. And we studied abroad together when we were in college. And so we got back in touch with some of our friends that we studied abroad in via Zoom and had a little reunion. And it was really just so uplifting. It was so nice to see everybody. So thinking about how you can do that. Number 6, staying hydrated and eating well. Again, when we're in our normal routine, we hopefully are trying to do that too. But now that we're out of that and we're all home, it could be something where we're either overeating or undereating, and not drinking as much water as perhaps we normally do. So just a reminder to try to be mindful of that. Number 7, developing a self-care toolkit. So this was kind of a different idea, and I'm going to read a little bit of what the psychologist who developed this list talked about with this. She said this can look different for everyone. A lot of successful self-care strategies involve a sensory component. So thinking of the 7 senses: touch, taste, sight, hearing, smell, vestibular or movement, and proprioceptive, meaning comforting pressure. So an idea for each of these could be a soft blanket or a stuffed animal, a hot chocolate, photos of vacations, comforting music, lavender or eucalyptus oil, a small swing or rocking chair, and a weighted blanket. A journal, an inspirational book, or a mandala coloring book is wonderful. Let's see, she said for children, it is great to help them create a self-regulation comfort box, often a shoebox or bin they can decorate and they could use on the ready for first aid when overwhelmed. So you can make this for children and also make one for you. So one of the tips, and which is on another page, but is to kind of have your own space. So if you can create your own space in your house where you can go, if you just need a few minutes to yourself, this is something, the self-care toolkit that you can have in that space. Throw on your weighted blanket or a pillow on your lap, put on some soothing music, maybe have some essential oils, whatever it is, and just take that moment to yourself. So thinking about those senses though to help regulate yourself again. Number 8, spend extra time playing with children. If you are at home with children, which is a blessing and makes this time extremely challenging at the same time. I have a 11-month-old and a 4-year-old. So things are kind of crazy at home. But when I can just be present and in the moment with my kids and following their lead and just really enjoying them, it does do wonders for them and for me. So if you do have children at home, I know that we're not going to be able to do that, to be present for them all the time. We're all trying to work and get a lot of other things done. So it does come with a whole slew of challenges. However, when we can spend that time with them, really playing with them and engaging and putting our phones down, is good for them and good for us. Given number 9, giving everyone the benefit of the doubt and a wide berth. I think this one is so important, and one that I am practicing on a regular basis with my husband, is that we're all under a tremendous amount of stress right now. The word unprecedented is being used a lot because that's what this time is. It's really unprecedented and it's extremely stressful, and we're all experiencing a collective trauma right now. With COVID-19, so much fear, anxiety. If we already have mental health issues, those are really being exacerbated right now. So it's a lot of stress. So knowing that we're all feeling that, we're all experiencing that, and when the brain is under stress, we are not at our best. We are not able to connect as easily and as respectfully as we normally do. And that's true for ourselves, and that's true for everyone around us. So being cognizant of that, being compassionate to ourselves and being compassionate to our partners, our family members, and really practicing forgiveness, not holding on to things, not holding grudges. This is not the time right now. There was one thing I just wanted to check that she had said in here that I thought was really helpful. And she said, it is important to move with grace through blow-ups, to not show up to every argument you are invited to. I really liked that. So we may have short fuses right now, shorter than usual, but it doesn't mean that if we get triggered by something that somebody says that we have to show up to that argument. We can take a deep breath. We can give them that wide berth and the benefit of the doubt and not enter into that argument. We have that choice. and to not hold grudges and continue disagreements. A big theme is to everyone to remember that we're all doing the best we can to get through this really tough time. And that's all you can expect of yourself, and that's all we can expect from those around us too. Number 10, everyone find their own retreat space. So I'd mentioned this earlier. So if you have the ability to find a space within your home, I just have a little tiny corner of my bedroom, which my kids still come into all the time. However, if I can go in there and tell my husband I just need a few minutes, I can sit in that chair, throw my blanket on, put on some music or a meditation for a few minutes and get that space reset and come back. So if we can all have that space, and important for children too. So if they know where their kind of safe space is, or a place they can go with some books and puzzles or something else that they can do a calming activity with, it's great to work with kids on them being able to access that as well. Number 11, expect behavioral issues in children and respond gently. So with your own children, and if you're a teacher or a paraprofessional, and you are reaching out to kids right now during this time, to students, know that with their parents are probably experiencing more behavioral issues from them at this time. And if you have kids too, that they may be acting out more than usual. And that's extremely normal and to be expected right now. Even if children don't understand exactly what's happening, they feel it on a physiological level, the collective stress that we're all experiencing, and are communicating that through their behavior if they're not able to verbalize it and talk about it. I mean, we as the adults have a hard time really processing all of this too and talking about it. So just knowing that we can expect it, and that now is a time to really practice, again, forgiveness with them, and working on helping them stay as regulated as possible. Just want to see if I'm missing anything that she said. She said, expect increased anxiety, worries, and fears, nightmares, difficulty separating or sleeping, testing limits, and meltdowns. Now is not the time to introduce major behavioral plans or consequences. Try to hold stable and focus on the emotional connection. Again, that could really happen through play. So being present and playful and just engaging in whatever activity the child is engaging on, and really lowering expectations in those moments. If children are having time with completing their academics, again, just lowering those expectations and just being present for them and connecting on an emotional level is really what's needed now more than ever. Number 12, a focus on safety and attachment. That goes along with what I was just talking about. So the psychologist who developed this said, we're going to be living for a bit with the unprecedented demand of meeting all work deadlines, homeschooling children, running a sterile household, and making a whole lot of entertainment in confinement. We can get wrapped up in meeting expectations in all domains, but we must remember that these are scary and unpredictable times for children. So focus on strengthening the connection through time spent following their lead, through physical touch, through play, through therapeutic books, and via verbal reassurances that you will be there for them in this time. So this is something to remember as educators, and then again, something we can pass along to parents if we're in touch with some parents right now too, to help lower their stress levels and remind them just to focus on the connection with their children. Number 13, lower expectations and practice radical self-acceptance. So again, building on what I've already been talking about, I really like the radical self-acceptance in this piece. So we're going to be doing too many things in this moment under fear and stress. So this doesn't make a formula for excellence. Instead, give yourself what psychologists call radical self-acceptance, accepting everything about yourself, your current situation, and your life without question, blame, or pushback. You can't fail at this. So we don't have a roadmap. There's no precedent for it. And we're all truly doing the best we can in an impossible situation. So reminding ourselves of that, practicing some positive self-talk around it. I'm doing the best I can. This is a really intense situation. It's impossible to do everything and to do it really well under best of circumstances, and especially right now. So reminding ourselves of that and being compassionate. Number 14, limiting social media. So a lot of us use social media to stay connected right now, maybe to get news. So there could be a lot of positive benefits to it. However, there could also be a lot of drawbacks. I know sometimes if I'm on social media or my husband is, and then I can sense that I'm getting kind of irritated or irritable, and then I can see him doing the same thing or getting off his phone and, you know, complaining about something that he just read. And so when we know that, the key is about those things, not to say don't ever use social media. The key is just to notice. So if you notice that you're using social media and you do tend to, when you're done scrolling or as you're scrolling, you're noticing your anxiety or you're noticing your frustration building, is to just pay attention to that, and take a deep breath. Maybe say, okay, looks like this is maybe not the most positive thing for me to do, not the most helpful thing for me to do at this time. And maybe we need to consider limiting it. So maybe only allowing yourself to check it once in the morning and once at night, and for 5 or 10 minutes each. Something of that nature, if you notice that it is something that's bringing you down. So, or watching the news. Watching the news can be really hard, too. So again, just considering limiting that if you find that it's a source of stress or anxiety producing for you. Number 15, notice the good in the world, the helpers. So yes, there's a lot of stress right now, and there's also a ton of good happening. So many people doing wonderful, wonderful things on a small scale and a large scale. And it doesn't really matter because it all feels good. So one example is I live in Buellton, in the middle of our county. And I love that our neighborhood, or that's kind of just the area, around us, they've started putting bears in windows. So they're like, for kids that are walking around, they're going on a bear hunt. And so a lot of the homes have bears in windows. So it just gives the kids an activity to do. It's free. It's nice to have as a parent, to not have to plan for stuff like that. I don't have to do anything. We just walk around the neighborhood and my son can say, oh, there's a bear, and we're going on a bear hunt. So we can just make it a game and have fun with it. And it just feels good. It helps me to feel connected with my neighbors, with my community, and it's just a nice activity to engage in with my son. So that feels good. And I'm grateful to those people that are participating. I know some people in neighborhoods have been painting rocks and laying those out in random spots, which also brings people joy. So really just noticing those kind of things and paying attention to them. People that are donating things right now, or creating kind of donation sites to drop stuff off at, that they're making that effort, is so beautiful and wonderful during this time. And then of course, all of our medical workers, and people that are really living and breathing COVID-19 on a daily basis and are helping others. Just paying attention to all that work can really help counteract all the stress and fear that we have during this time. All right, number 16. Finding ways to help others. So this can be big and small, to give back. So if you're able to do that, say that maybe if you have some neighbors, or some family, elderly people that are elderly, offering to go to the pharmacy and pick up their prescriptions, or do a grocery delivery, or maybe make an extra batch of whatever you're making for dinner and drop that off. Those, going to that effort and doing those for others, is not only something that benefits those people, it really benefits us. It releases all of those feel good chemicals in our systems that help us to feel positive, to feel connected. So there's a lot of science behind that, behind giving. It's not just about the receiving, it's really in the giving, where there's a lot of benefit. So finding ways that we can do that during this time, in small and big ways. Number 17, find something you can control and control the heck out of it. So I know for my family, right now, for my husband in particular, this has been doing house projects. He is just gung-ho on getting stuff done around the house, which is one silver lining that's come out of this, but it really is just about something to control, something that he can see through from start to finish and control every aspect of it, just control the heck out of it. And for him, that's really helping him to stay grounded, to have that project to work on. And then that leads into the next one. So finding a long-term project to dive into. So this can be different things for different people. This can be doing a puzzle. maybe like doing one of those really large puzzles if you have the space for that. It can be a lot of different things, but this is a time where if you're able to consider that, find a long-term project you can work on. A lot of people are organizing their photos, doing things like that. Number 19, engage in repetitive movements and left-right movements. So again, finding time to move your body throughout the day. Left-right movements help integrate our brain. So things like stretching, yoga, those type of things are really good for us. Number 20, find an expressive art and go for it. So things like painting. I just am able to do this with my son, but we draw with chalk a lot on the ground or do some coloring. I really love doing the mandalas, just like the adult coloring books. Those are really fun. I know some people who are learning how to knit right now. There's so many videos on YouTube where you can learn how to do that. So if you're able to do something new and step out of your comfort zone, now's the time. Susie Joy Juice, I just saw you put that into the chat box. Yeah, you must have watched the Conscious Discipline series yesterday, which we have again today. But yes, the Joy Juice. So that's I'm doing a workshop where I'm showing all the Conscious Discipline modules by Dr. Becky Bailey, and she developed a social emotional learning curriculum or program, I would say, and she has 10 modules. We just did the first one yesterday. The second one is this afternoon. I believe that we're capped out, unfortunately, on that training now, but there's a lot of good information, and she calls it Joy Juice, kind of that giving and receiving, that we get so much joy from that. So thanks, Susie, for bringing that up. All right. I'm hoping that one of the silver linings that is going to come from this COVID-19 crisis is that all these things I just mentioned are going to be things that we not only are aware of and trying to practice now, but are things that we value and carry with us moving forward, and especially as educators. That a lot of times we're just expected to kind of plod on, and we're not really taking the time to put our oxygen mask on first and take care of ourselves. And if we don't do that, then we're really not able to be there for others, for our own family members and for the students that we support. So I'm really hoping that all this stuff is still really valued, and I think it will be. There's been a lot of webinar series coming from the California Department of Education that I've been participating in that have a lot of people, around 9,000 people involved. And they've really been talking about the mental health of our educators and how we need to focus on this now and all the time. So hoping this is something that continues. Breda, you said, I had a neighbor who made masks for her neighbors and another who shared her tomato starters. Yeah, that's awesome. So again, like big and small things, that's amazing. So nice to do those kind of activities for others to help us feel connected and to be able to give is so wonderful. Oh, I forgot we had 5 more. All right. So 21, we're going to find the lightness and humor each day. So sometimes when we're going through a hard time, we don't allow ourselves, or we feel guilty giving ourselves permission to laugh. And now is a time that we're still able to do that, even though there's a lot of difficult things happening around us and we're experiencing a lot of stress ourselves. It's still extremely important that we allow ourselves to find the lightness and humor each day. So I've been watching a comedy series at night after our kids go to sleep. We just watch 1 or 2 episodes just to get that joy, just to allow ourselves to laugh and think about something completely different that's not serious. And that's been helping me and my husband out a lot. And also when we're with our kids, just really trying to laugh and enjoy those moments and give ourselves permission to do so. Number 22, reach out for help. So your team is here for you. I'm here for you. If you do want to use my contact information on the first slide, that now is a time where we need to lean on others, or we need to ask for support if we need it. So please do offer, to talk with your friends and family, that you're there for them and they're also there for you. And your educational team is there for you too. So knowing that it's okay to have a hard time. It's okay if today is really difficult, right? That's to be expected. And the more that we can own that and speak to other people is when we genuinely and authentically connect with others. And give them permission to do so too. Number 23, chunk your quarantine time. So take it moment by moment. We're starting to see a little lights at the end of the tunnel with some restrictions being lifted right now, which feels great. However, we also don't know if in the fall, are we going to be returning back to the extreme social distancing that we've been in. So it's very easy to get extremely overwhelmed when we start thinking too far in the future. I have absolutely noticed myself doing that. And I practice what we call in the therapy world, like thought stopping. So paying attention to that. And I know if I notice my thoughts racing and I'm thinking too much about the future and it's becoming very overwhelming, I literally picture a stop sign in my brain. Just stop sign and close my eyes, take a deep breath, realize that's out of my control. I can't predict the future. We don't know what is going to happen. All we can do right now is try to be in the moment. Try to be in the moment and day to day. Sometimes right now I feel like it feels like Groundhog Day, where every day you wake up and you're like, okay, this is going to be same thing. But trying to take it day by day and moment by moment as much as possible to try to minimize that overwhelm that we can feel when we start to think too much about how everything's going to play out in the future. Along those lines, number 24, remind yourself daily that this is temporary. So again, even though we don't know exactly how or when this is going to come to an end and life will return to normal, even though I don't know it's ever going to be as normal than previous normal was. But eventually we're not going to be in social distancing mode. Eventually we're going to be able to go out without masks on. And so this is temporary. It will end. Reminding ourselves of that and really reminding our children and our teenagers, especially our teenagers, really, their brain is rewiring themselves during those teenage years. And they really are living moment to moment to moment. And everything can feel like it is going to be, it can feel like it's going to be forever. They don't have the ability, they don't have the experience, they don't have the brain organization capacity to think that far in the future and know that this is going to end. And so it can be extremely challenging. So reminding ourselves of that and reminding our children of that is so important, that even though we're still in this mode, there will be an end. Number 25, find the lesson. So if we can find the lesson from this, again, the silver linings that come from a difficult experience, and look for those, that really helps as well. So that's our list of 25 of the mental health wellness tips for quarantine. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions on that they wanted to chime in on? Feel free to unmute if you guys have anything that you wanted to share. If not, I'll keep.
I was wondering if that list would be available to copy.
Yeah, absolutely. Or I can also email you. Is it Cindy?
Uh-huh.
Cindy, if you don't mind, you can either text me your email address to my phone number that was on the first slide, or I can just type it into the chat box for you all.
I think I could share it with some other educators that would.
Absolutely. So there's my phone number, and I'll type in my email as well. And so if you guys want a full list of that, please do email me or text me your email, and I will send that to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and continue on. I just wanted to throw this slide in there. If you guys are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is something, again, to keep in mind all the time, not just during this time, but with our students, with ourselves, is that in order to be at the optimal phase of development, which is self-actualization at the top, or the desire to become the most that one can be, we have to have everything below all of those needs met in order to be that best, most productive version of ourselves. So starting at the bottom, so knowing that our physiological needs have to be met first. So things like having air to breathe, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. So we have to have those basic needs met. Right now, some of those things maybe are compromised, that they could be compromised for people before this crisis and now more so. So, being able to go to the grocery store is a lot harder than it used to. Um, and so keeping those things in mind for ourselves, that puts extra stress on us and it makes it harder for us to reach those higher stages. So if we're compromised at the lower stages, and thinking of our students, so our students who on a regular basis experience difficulty with this. So with having adequate shelter and food, and sleep and clothing, that if they don't have those basic needs met, it's really hard for them to then feel safe. So moving up to safety needs, that personal security, employment, resources, health, and property. So if they aren't able to have access to those things, then it's really difficult for them to feel safe and then be available to accept love and feel a sense of belonging. So it's true for our children, our students all the time. I mean, it's true for us all the time. So keeping these things in mind, and then moving up the ladder into the esteem. So respect for oneself and respect for others, having self-esteem. Again, if those other more basic needs aren't met, if a student doesn't have that love and belonging, doesn't have those physiological needs or safety needs, then it's really challenging for them to be able to have that self-esteem and to show that respect for others, because their basic needs and their safety needs aren't being met. So this is something that's true all the time, and just wanted to bring to your attention now, again, having that compassion for others and that compassion for ourselves, and helping recognize this and to get these needs met where we can, and helping others to get them help them get what they can as well, so that they can be as high up on this hierarchy of needs as possible. All right, so how does this apply in the school context? So we've been talking a bit about students, but in order to be really effective in what we do, so not just in teaching, but really with connecting authentically with students, we have to be in touch with our own stuff, and being in touch with our own stuff and taking care of ourselves as much as possible is the best thing that we can do for our students, so that we can be as present and regulated as possible. It's important to be aware of what may be contributing to a student's behavior, but it's even more important that we're in touch with what's contributing to our own. So the way we learn is through mirror neurons, things that we can't see, but how our systems are communicating, which is really challenging to do over Zoom. So one of the major drawbacks. But if we're not able to take those deep breaths, if we're not able to take a moment to regulate ourselves and then respond in a calm, compassionate way, it's really difficult for us to be able to then teach that skill to somebody else. Because the way that we learn from each other is through those mirror neurons, is being able to see and witness somebody else be able to do that. So we can't lend or teach a skill to students that we ourselves don't possess. So if you're practicing self-care and you're really working on taking care of yourself as much as you can, that is something that will permeate, right, through your interactions with other people. Even if you're not telling them, hey, I practice this on a regular basis, we feel it. We feel their sense of calm and presence, because they're able to be more present in the moment with us. If we take care of ourselves, we can be present enough to take care of others. And I really want to highlight that word enough. None of us is perfect. We cannot expect perfection from ourselves, nor should we, or anybody else. So yes, self-care is important, and you're not going to be able to do it all the time or to the best of your ability all the time, and that's okay. It has to be okay. Otherwise, it just becomes another source of stress. So knowing that we're going to do the best to take care of ourselves, which allows us to then be present enough, because we can't be present all the time, in the perfect way all the time. It's impossible to do. So keeping that in mind, and that our students, our children, our partners all benefit when we're present enough. Right? So it starts with you. So thinking about how your own histories and beliefs play a role. What kind of mood did you walk into the room in? I know often I say that I am tired, but that's because I have two little ones who do not sleep super great, or right now because it's lighter out later and then the sun's out earlier, they're sleeping less at night because they feel like they should only sleep when it's dark. So I'm definitely more sleep deprived. So when I wake up in the morning, if I'm waking up and I'm already noticing that, gosh, I didn't get enough sleep last night, trying to pay attention to that and what can I do so that I don't go down that negative spiral of, oh gosh, I'm going to be tired today. What's that going to look like? I'm probably going to be grumpier. Thinking, okay, yes, I'm tired. And what can I do about that? What can I do to help bring that joy juice or to lift myself up and change my frame of mind? Because that's really going to set the stage for the rest of my day and how I interact with others. How, like just what I said, how can I reset so I can become the best version of myself? So thinking about that now when you get out of bed in the morning before you start whatever Zoom meetings you have or other things that you're engaging in throughout your day. If you need to reset, try to hit that pause button. So moving on to our definitions. Trauma. So trauma is an umbrella term used to describe the inability of an individual or community to respond in a healthy way, physically, emotionally, and mentally to acute or chronic stress. So right now we're all experiencing chronic stress with the COVID-19 situation. Trauma is really this umbrella term that's applied to so many different things. So we do have a lot of our students in our therapeutic learning programs that I consult in. Not all, but a lot of them come from a trauma background. So meaning they have experienced in that context, meaning some form of abuse, neglect, physical abuse, emotional, psychological, sexual abuse is a form of trauma. And talking about their inability to respond in a healthy way, right? So a lot of those students have trauma. And now we're all going through this collective trauma. So it is something that is very real, that a lot of people have experienced trauma on some level, and it's our body's inability to really reconcile that trauma. And when students experience trauma or carrying that trauma, which a lot of them are now on some degree, some level, varying levels, we then, as educators and people that support them, experience secondary or what we call vicarious trauma. It is something that you don't make a choice to do. It is just something that I think a lot of you as educators, I think nobody got into this field because they don't like kids. Everybody loves and cares about children and feels like we can make a difference. So we're all wired to connect and we're compassionate people. And so in doing that and being around people who have experienced trauma, we take that on to a certain degree. So the vicarious trauma is the natural consequent behaviors resulting from knowledge about a traumatizing event experienced by a significant other. It is the stress from wanting to help a traumatized or suffering person. So knowing that that person is suffering and we feel that, we can't help but take that on to help an attempt to help relieve their suffering, which is going to build on this. So for compassion, we're all compassionate people, which is a feeling of deep sympathy or sorrow for another, accompanied by a strong desire to relieve their suffering. And with that compassion can come compassion fatigue. So the emotional residue or strain of exposure to working with those suffering from consequences of traumatic events. It differs from burnout, but can coexist with it. And we'll talk about burnout in a little bit. Compassion fatigue can occur due to exposure on one case or can be due to a cumulative effect of trauma. So right now, having compassion for everything that we're all experiencing and knowing that, well, we can't help but take that on, and we have that compassion, we experience that vicarious trauma can lead then to compassion fatigue, that overwhelm of we really want to help relieve the suffering of these individuals that we're working with and supporting and these children. And we can experience that compassion fatigue or kind of burnout around that. God, it's just a lot. We're taking on a lot. And so when you're talking with your kids on Zoom or connecting with families who are really struggling right now, understandably, you can't help but take that on to a certain extent. So on that note, I'm going to show you guys this video that I think does a really good job of visually explaining this. So let me share this screen with you. This is just a little clip. We'll go through real fast. All right. Bring you guys back in just a second here. Okay. What did you guys think of that video? Did you like that? I think it does a really good job of just showing how we take that on when we connect with somebody else who's suffering, how it overwhelms our system. We carry that with us. It doesn't just dissipate. We carry that with us, and then we therefore need a way to relieve that in some way, to alleviate that feeling that we have taken on. And in that video, they showed the dog. Did somebody want to share something? Thought I heard somebody unmute.
Well, I had a student that I was one-on-one, and when he would have a behavior that escalated, you know, and I'm like on eggshells all day waiting for something else to happen to aggravate him even more.
Yeah.
But I've helped him through it, and then by the time I get home, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. I could just use an alcohol. But usually my sons will ask me what happened, and then they see like something funny about it, and then they make me laugh.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it wasn't that bad. I helped them through it. That's right. Yeah. So
Right.
they do make me feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. So just that connection that you have with your sons and being able to release that, to laugh, can help alleviate that for sure. Because we can't help it. Yes, if you're walking on eggshells all day, if you're worried, waiting for the next time, that's really challenging. That can really weigh us down. I know in the beginning of this past school year, I just come back from maternity leave. So I was very sleep deprived. I was separated, for the first time from my second baby. So I was getting used to that. And I was in a classroom, an elementary classroom with students with a lot of behavioral and emotional needs. And I was modeling and working with the kids. And at the end of that week, I was so exhausted and I ended up getting shingles. And I was like, wow. And that to me was this huge wake up call of just, I need to take care of myself. I need to practice exactly what I'm talking about now, which is part of the reason why I decided to develop this, this professional development series, and one I hope to build on and improve moving forward, because I really want this to be something that administrators value and that educators need to have the time and the space to struggle and to practice self-care, because it is so important. Because if we're not taking care of ourselves, which I was clearly not taking care of myself as best as I could, then we aren't able to then be there for others. So finding these ways, practicing, yeah, Brady got shingles once too in response to stress. Yeah, it's absolutely a stress immune response. So it's not fun, not something I ever want to experience again. I still get the pain in my shoulder again when I start to feel that stress. And then that's a cue to me of like, wow, I really need to slow down, need to practice some self-care and really take some time for myself. So important. So some of these signs of compassion fatigue can be so again, paying attention to the signs, right? So if we're isolating, or you see somebody else doing these things, isolating more often, to feeling really down or depressed with difficulty focusing. So you're trying to get through something and you just keep getting distracted and can't focus on what's in front of you more so than normal. Feeling more aggressive or irritable, experiencing a higher level of anxiety. insomnia or difficulty sleeping, excessive drinking. You're saying like you just want to go home and have a drink. And to some degree, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, like that's not terrible as long as that's not an issue for you, right? It's that everyone's different. So it's where that slips over into something that's not healthy. Um, an appetite change or anger or sadness. So an increase in any one of those different from your normal is something to pay attention to. And this is one that I think it hit home for me, is one of those signs of compassion fatigue that we often overlook, and it can be the most dangerous, is denial. So denial can easily hinder your ability to assess the level of fatigue and stress in your life, as well as thwart your efforts to begin the healing process. And that's what I experienced firsthand when I got the shingles, is that I was just trying to trudge on, I'm back from maternity leave, I'm working, I'm in the trenches, I'm, doing this, and yes, it's hard, but I'm fine. And in that denial of like, I'm fine, I'm good, everything's fine, when it really wasn't fine. And that's when it can be that overwhelm, because you're not then in touch with yourself, and you're not able to start the healing process. You're not able to connect with others about it and talk about it and own it and be okay with that, and therefore get help and practice self-care. So that's where for me, like I feel like the feeling in my shoulder, or I'll notice that I'm more irritable. So paying attention to those signs and symptoms is so important, and noticing them and not judging yourself for them, knowing that this is normal, it's part of the human condition. And therefore that is a cue to you to try to do whatever you can to practice your self-care, whatever that looks like for you. So in schools, leaders and peers should look for these signs in others. So if you notice, this is again, once we're back in school, some of these might apply now, but if you notice that your colleagues, maybe you're more absent than usual, that they're struggling more with their teammates, that there's more disagreements amongst teams, that your colleagues are feeling more overwhelmed or unable to finish their work, again, outside of what would be normal. Everyone's, there's always a lot to do. So if it's outside of their normal ability, they're really negative, maybe towards school leadership. They're really resistant or kind of stuck in their ways towards change, or they might be showing a general apathy towards the school mission or its success, maybe that they're experiencing that compassion fatigue. Burnout. So we're going to talk a little bit about this definition. So burnout's a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion by long-term involvement in emotionally demanding situations. It's characterized by emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a reduced feeling of personal accomplishment. Burnout is a condition that begins gradually and becomes progressively worse. So this is kind of what would be further along on this continuum. So we start with, we're all compassionate people. We all then have that empathy and care and connection with our students and those around us. And in that, we can't help but then experience that vicarious trauma, or that secondary trauma, which then can lead to compassion fatigue and to burnout. So none of this is bad. You're not doing something wrong if you're experiencing compassion fatigue and burnout. We all vacillate on this continuum, so myself included. So I notice that there are days where I am gung-ho, I am just ready to take it on, I'm so excited, I do genuinely love my job. I'm so grateful to be able to say that. And so a lot of days I feel very motivated, and I'm in that compassionate place, that empathy place. And yet I work with a lot of students and a lot of staff that therefore experience that secondary trauma. And so I often find myself in the compassion fatigue or burnout place. And the key to this is really not judging yourself for it, is noticing. Just noticing that, gosh, I'm thinking these thoughts, this is where I'm going mentally, and knowing that that is something that's going to eventually overwhelm your system, and you are not going to be as effective as you can be. You are not going to be able to be the best version of yourself. So not judging yourself for that, noticing it, and then again, doing what you can to alleviate that. So whether that means going home and talking to your children and finding the humor in the situation that happened that day, or it's going home and cooking dinner and having that glass of wine and connecting with your family. If it's going home and taking a walk, after your kids go to bed and listening to music that you enjoy. whatever that is that it's just really a sign that you need to practice some self-care. It does not mean that you're doing something wrong or that there's something flawed in you. It means that you're a compassionate, empathetic person and that you can't help but experience the secondary and vicarious trauma, experience some compassion fatigue, and which leads to burnout. So again, just being knowledgeable and aware of that, and then just using that as a sign to practice that self-care. So I see some of you are commenting, you're saying, yes, I do notice it, then feeling guilty, right? So I think that's kind of something that if anything you're going to take away from this is that is really trying not to judge yourself for that. Thinking about when you see your colleagues struggling with that, are you judging them? And that they're feeling compassion fatigue, that they're feeling overwhelmed in that. Normally we don't, right? Normally we have compassion for them and say, well, gosh, it's just because you're a caring person. You care so much, you're trying so hard. And of course this is difficult for you, right? And then trying to help them in a way, any way that you can to lift them back up again. And we need to do that, remember to do the same things for ourselves. To be that compassionate with ourselves as well, and that forgiving, and not to judge ourselves, because this is a very normal experience. The danger can be is when if we're stuck in the place of compassion fatigue and burnout a lot. If we're constantly in that cycle and we're really working on practicing self-care and we're trying to connect and we're trying to do all the things we know and yet we still get stuck there, that's when we may need to seek additional support or really think, gosh, what's going on for me? Is this the right place for me to be? And maybe it's not, and that's okay too, right? But it's really noticing and trying not to be judgmental of ourselves. It's the fear of appearing self-absorbed, Rita. Yeah. So I think that the danger in that is that self-judgment, that, is judging ourselves around that. And that means that we're too self-absorbed. But if we're not self-absorbed, if we're not really taking care of number one, which is ourselves, if we're not there, I'm sure you guys have all seen the analogy, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but of putting that oxygen mask on first. In order to be able to be breathing out oxygen so we can be alive, and therefore put the oxygen mask on somebody else. If we don't do that and we pass out, we can't help anybody around us. So I would reframe it not as feeling self-absorbed, but of putting your oxygen mask on first so that you therefore have the bandwidth to be there for other people. Because if you don't, you're going to be weighed down. You're going to be in this constant place of feeling weighed down where you're never going to be able to be the best version of yourself for others. So it's a necessity, really. So trying to reframe that as best we can. Anybody have anything else before I'm going to do another meditation break? So this is going to be a slightly different, it's going to be a different video, different voice, another opportunity just to kind of sit back, get comfortable. This is kind of your mindfulness and meditation break that's already built into your day to day, which is the benefit of this workshop. So anybody else have any comments on what we just talked about before I move on to that? No? Okay. Okay. All right. Sorry, there's gonna be a little ad. Give me a sec.
You may have heard this word.
This is the wrong video. Sorry, friends. Just a second. Here we go. Nope, that's not it either. Here we go. That's the right one. Okay.
So find a relaxed, comfortable position, seated on a chair or on the floor, on a cushion. Keep your back upright, but not too tight. Hands resting wherever they're comfortable. Tongue on the roof of your mouth or wherever it's comfortable. And you can notice your body from the inside, noticing the shape of your body, the weight, touch. And let yourself relax and become curious about your body seated here, the sensations of your body, the touch, the connection with the floor or the chair. Relax any areas of tightness or tension. Just breathe, soften. And now begin to tune into your breath in your body, feeling the natural flow of breath. Don't need to do anything to your breath. Not long, not short, just natural. And notice where you feel your breath in your body. It might be in your abdomen. It may be in your chest or throat or in your nostrils. See if you can feel the sensations of breath, one breath at a time. When one breath ends, the next breath begins. Now, as you do this, you might notice that your mind may start to wander. You might start thinking about other things. If this happens, this is not a problem. It's very natural. Just notice that your mind has wandered. You can say thinking or wandering in your head softly. And then gently redirect your attention right back to the breathing. So we'll stay with this for some time in silence, just a short time. Noticing our breath, from time to time getting lost in thought and returning to our breath. See if you can be really kind to yourself in the process. And once again, you can notice your body, your whole body seated here. Let yourself relax even more deeply. And then offer yourself some appreciation for doing this practice today. Whatever that means to you. Finding a sense of ease and well-being for yourself in this day.
All right, everyone, I'm gonna bring us back. So how is that different for you guys from the other video, the other meditation break? Was it better, worse? Did you like it? Was it easier, harder this time? Feel free to unmute or put in the chat box. I personally prefer her voice better. She's easier for me. I can relax more with her voice. You much preferred this video, Jamie? The female voice had a calming effect. Yeah. I use the Calm app. I'm just looking it up on my phone, and there's a daily meditation that comes along with it, and it's a female voice, and I really like it. It's just it's birds chirping right when you turn it on, and it just reminds you to take a deep breath, and then there's a daily about 10 to 11 minute meditation that she does, and I find her voice very soothing. Yeah. And then Lisa, you like the first one. So again, yeah, it's just kind of everybody's different. So finding the ones that resonate with you and work for you. So try some different ones. Okay, so we've learned a lot about self-care, or a lot about these definitions of trauma, vicarious trauma, burnout. And so now we're going to talk a little bit more what we do. We've already covered a lot of this with the COVID-19 tips. And I've already kind of touched on these, so I may go through some of these slides a little faster, but coming back to that reference of putting that oxygen mask on first, right? So we're all busy, and we all end up sacrificing some healthy routines to make room for all the needs of others. But at the end of the day, if we keep doing that over and over and over again on a daily basis, just like I did when I got shingles, that weighs us down, overwhelms our systems, and then we're less effective at what we do. So in order to support students or those around us, we must first support ourselves. So thinking of it as a banking system, and like this analogy, so you need to have money in the bank in order to make withdrawals. If you have nothing left to give because you've not taken care of yourself, your bank will be deficient, and you will also be even more stressed out. So remember that you're worthy of being cared for also, that you need to fill that bank in order to be able to make withdrawals and in order to help other people. So we have to be thinking about how we're filling our own banks. So definition of self-care is what we've been talking about, but it's been defined by the Department of Health as the care taken by individuals toward their own health and well-being. It comprises of the actions they take to lead a healthy lifestyle, to meet their social, emotional, and psychological needs, to take care of their long-term condition, and to prevent further illness or accidents. And the most important part I like about this is that talks about in self-care has been described as an ethical imperative. So that ethically, it's imperative that we practice self-care. Otherwise, we cannot be there for others and be, like we said earlier, as effective as we possibly can be. So it's something it's not just something that we talk about in this kind of foo-foo terminology, or at least it shouldn't be. It should be something that is recognized. And again, I hope is going to be recognized at a much higher level on an ongoing basis as an ethical imperative that we value as educators, that we all need to take care of ourselves. So I'm going to show you guys this one. This will be our last video. This is about a 5-minute video about self-care, but I think this guy does a great job. He kind of has a funny personality too, but about talking about self-care and giving you some different ideas than the ones that I've already mentioned. So hang in there while I share my screen with you. Okay.
Hey there, let's talk about self-care. Now, Parks and Rec, of course, is pretty great, but self-care is more than just treating yourself. Self-care is not a reward, though sometimes that can be part of it. It's a vital piece of the ongoing process of being a human. To quote the self-help classic, Codependent No More, self-care is an attitude that says, I am responsible for myself. In other words, I am my responsibility, and I will honor that responsibility as I would anything else that was precious to me. So let's make an action plan for using self-care to make our lives more awesome. Step 1. Recognize that it is indeed okay to take care of yourself. Nay, it is not just okay, it is smart. As Lifehacker puts it, self-care helps prevent burnout, reduces the negative psychological and physical effects of stress, and helps you refocus on what's true and important. Like, there's an entire peer-reviewed international journal on burnout. This is like a real big difficult problem to solve. Now, this may seem counterintuitive, but it actually makes you more productive, not less, to set time aside for yourself. And regardless of your productivity levels, recognize that you are a human being, and that is enough to warrant compassion and kindness. For real. Step 2, ideally before the need strikes, research outwardly and inwardly what self-care means and what works for you. There are self-care actions that can help pretty much everyone: getting proper nutrition, some exercise, enough sleep, hydrating, and taking small breaks throughout the workday. I like to go for walks, and I like to be forced to do it by my friends or family or baby. We'll link to a list of almost 50 self-care actions down in the doobly-doo. But everyone is unique, so it's important to ask what actions make me feel better. Journaling, texting something nice to a friend, like watching videos of pug puppies, doing a bunch of push-ups, pillow fights, putting some projects on the back burner maybe. I personally am all in for the baby cuddles. I have a baby now, and I feel like I'm doing a thing that I was designed for and that I need to be doing, and that I also just really like. Sometimes he's angry though, and he yells at me, but most of the time I get cuddles. Now, one possible self-care action from us to you: start a digital warm and fuzzy file and fill it with compliments or kind words you've received, good memories, and favorite photos. Like, I have to admit, I get lots of people saying nice things about me on the internet, and that helps get me through the day. Being able to look through this file when you're feeling down might go a long way to bringing you back up. You want this list to be both ample and flexible, and you may even want to break it into different categories. For instance, T. Michael Martin, the fellow who wrote this script, by the way, has a spreadsheet of self-care actions organized by types of negative experiences. After all, the self-care you need while you're depressed may not be the same self-care that helps when you're overwhelmed with work. Also, if other people are involved in these self-care actions, it's totally cool to let them know now that they are part of your action plan. They may not always be available, but odds are if they're a good friend, they're going to do their best to do their part. Step 3, self-care powers activate. It's best if you can recognize the warning signs that you could use some self-care before things go into the red zone. For me, by the way, it's when I notice my fingers going to websites that I didn't intend on going to. Like, just typing in reddit.com when I have a ton of work to do is a sign that I should go for maybe a little walk to recharge the batteries. If you're keeping a journal, you might notice a pattern or two in your behavior. Perhaps you'll notice a bleaker mood than normal or disturbed sleep. Either way, once the need becomes apparent, consult your list and follow through. And that is all that we have for you today. But if you have any self-care tips, please let us and other people who are looking know down in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. In the meantime, take care of yourself, your friends, and your neighbors. It's the adult thing to do.
All right. Bring this back. So I really like that video. I think he has a lot of good ideas. I personally really like the idea of having that folder that you keep. You know, sometimes we get messages from people that are just really uplifting or really kind, or really kind of thanking us for something that maybe we did a really good job of, or they just really enjoyed, and saving those. Because even though in the moment we can really take that in and feel it and it feels great, sometimes we forget about them because our brain selects for the negative, that we just kind of dismiss those and aren't able to access them as easily in our memories. So if we put those into a file, then that's something we can reference back and be like, oh yes, I remember. There is a lot of good. There are a lot of people here that are grateful that I have done great things. Anything else that stood out to you guys from that video? You feel like sharing? Nope, good. Okay. So this is just a nice little physical kind of representation of all the different areas that we can practice self-care in. So it's not just mindfulness or meditation. A lot of them were mentioned in the COVID-19 kind of self-care tips, but that there's the areas of physical self-care, mental self-care, spiritual self-care, and emotional self-care. So trying to find something in every category that you can practice and that works for you. And I did like in his video how he talks about your self-care might look different if you're feeling really overwhelmed, or if you're feeling really angry. you might use a different form of self-care, right? We have a punching bag in our garage that we use for exercise. And then we also use it and are teaching our toddler to use it for when he's feeling really ramped up and angry. So that might be something that you want to do when you're angry, but maybe not something you do when you're down. Right. So thinking about these different areas and how you can use strategies in different parts in order to meet whatever symptom that you're experiencing at that time. Right. All right. So I think this is important to mention that self-care, and we've already brought this up briefly earlier, but that self-care may not always constitute a health promoting behavior. So it's not always things like yoga, exercise, eating well, sleeping well, all of those things. It can be things like having a glass of wine when you get home, or having a piece of chocolate. So it can be a small indulgence that generates a positive mental and emotional gain that we get benefit from. So it's not necessarily something that we need to frown upon or judge ourselves for or judge others for, but there is a catch. So the catch is knowing the line between when that's an indulgence and when it starts to become detrimental debauchery. So this varies from individual. It's not universally defined. So it really has to be something that's individualized, but being aware of it can, of when if it crosses that line, but knowing that indulging in something can be a form of self-care that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. And it's not, self-care doesn't have to be limited to specific activities. So self-care can also be something that in the form of setting boundaries. So saying no, right? That can be you taking care of yourself. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, that may be time to start setting those boundaries around your time and your availability. So knowing that it's okay to say, gosh, this is just too much for me right now. In order to take care of myself and put that oxygen mask on first, I need to just prioritize things. And maybe right now I'm not willing to take that extra thing on, and I need to say no for now. And when something changes, something lightens up, or I feel that space where I'm available to do so, I will then tackle that next thing or help that next person. But right now, in order to be the best version of myself, to be available as much as I can be for others, I have to say no to that, right? Or set a boundary around that. And that's okay. That is you practicing self-care. So again, being choosy with your commitments. So we say, yeah, it's great, connect with other people, set up Zoom calls with others, connect with your friends, but don't think that means you have to do that all the time, every day, in order to be practicing self-care. Because when self-care starts to feel like it's just another thing you have to do, it's not really self-care. So, so I know that I love doing the Zoom calls with my friends, but I'm trying to do like 1 or 2 a week, so that it's not something that feels like, oh gosh, I don't want to have to do that tonight, right? That shouldn't be how it feels. Self-care works in conjunction with, not in isolation from, community care. So we need social networks that support the best versions of ourselves. So keeping in mind that sometimes when we're connecting with others, which is generally a pretty positive thing, again, paying attention to when that can slip into something that's negative. So if we're talking with some people or a group of people or one person and noticing that, gosh, after talking with them, I'm kind of feeling down, like we're more admiring the problem, or it just seems like it's really negative a lot of the time, and I don't feel good after I'm connecting with these people, paying attention to that, right? And trying to gravitate towards those people that, it's okay to talk about the difficult things, but if we're always doing that and always feeling, and I love my sister, but I can use her as an example with this, that she is one that often is kind of spinning out, and it can just be a lot to listen to, and to try to support her with, and sometimes it gets to be very overwhelming for me, and so I have to set my boundaries around that, because I'm not trying to change her. That's who she is and that's where she's at, and I honor that, and yet I know that it can affect me negatively. So I set boundaries around that and how often I talk to her and for how long, so that I can be the best version of myself when I am talking to her, and then I can get off the phone and not feel this like doom and gloom, right? Michaela, you're sharing that when you've had a really emotional, mentally exhausting day, you get either your favorite food or go for pasta from the Olive Garden and talk about your day with someone, and it normally makes you feel better. That's awesome. Yes, Absolutely. So that's something like, yes, getting your favorite food or pasta is a wonderful way to do that and then connect with someone. Lisa, is napping self-care? Absolutely. That's totally self-care. I mean, if you start napping every day, all day, like, then that's a problem. But if you're taking naps and you feel rejuvenated and you feel good after that, that's fantastic. Michaela, back to your point, my mom's Italian. And whenever I start to tell her like, oh, I'm having a hard time, Mom, it's a hard day. She always says to me, oh, honey, just get yourself a nice pasta, make some sauce, and get a glass of wine. And that's always her form of self-care. But it does make me feel nice, warm and fuzzy feelings, like when I think about a bowl of pasta and a glass of red wine. So that can be a form of self-care, right? And it sounds like an indulgence, but that's okay. That's not a bad thing. That can be a form of self-care. Again, if you're eating that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that's happening every day, then maybe that's something that you need to examine. But until then, not something you need to judge. So, in school support to promote self-care. So what might this look like in school when we're back in school? Hopefully, again, we're going to be valuing this more as we go along, but that there will be more professional development around self-care and or mindfulness practices, that you could consider ideas like outside the box. And this is something that you may not have control over. This may be something that we need to share with administration, like to the principal, or create or if you don't already have one, create a staff wellness group. Can be something that you can consider, but bringing in somebody that can lead a meditation or teach some kind of restorative practice for you, give staff an outlet or that safe space to talk about that trauma or that vicarious trauma that they've taken on. Again, they're going to experience that compassion fatigue or burnout, and just being able to be honest about that and support each other in that helps relieve that burden. Like in that video we watched of like all that black color, helps lighten that up, turn it to a lighter shade of gray or white, right? When we're able to connect with others in a supportive environment. So creating space for that in our team meetings to do that, to connect. Engaging in fun team building exercises can also be a great way to do that. So it all comes back to the power of connection. So that human to human interaction, being there for each other, and the healing that takes place in that. So things we can do at school is that strong peer network. So knowing that you don't need to go at it alone, that we all need to be working to cultivate a positive school culture where supporting each other is the norm. Building and relying upon small support groups, so staff teams or work friendships that can help make the work more manageable. Because when we realize that we're not alone, the burden feels lighter. And we only realize we're not alone if we're all authentic with each other. If we're not all having that generic response of like, oh, I'm great. It's great. Everything's good today, right? The only way to shift that is to model it and to share, when you are having a hard time. That's when we authentically connect, and that's when the burden gets lighter. It's important that that these support networks remain a positive resource, what I talked about a little bit earlier, rather than a breeding ground for negativity. So we don't want it just to be a complaint fest, but a time where we share our burdens and what's bringing us down so that we can connect and then rebuild with each other, having that always be the focus. So things like we can do to help relieve that stress is organizing time to take a walk with your colleagues if you have a prep period, instead of forcing yourself to sit in front of the computer and just get that one last thing done, which even though you need to do, that may be something that's just a breath of fresh air. Getting outside and getting some fresh air might actually help you so much more and make you more available, so that when you do, you can come back and tackle that thing later, but then you're going to be more available for your students if you had that connection time with your colleague and you got some fresh air, even if it's 5-10 minutes. And remembering that positivity is contagious and peer support makes a strong foundation for your hard work. I'm just going to check the chat here. Jamie, sometimes you reply, I'm good, because you do not want to share your feelings or situation with the person asking. Absolutely. Totally. Don't mean to not honor that. So it may be that person you don't feel safe with sharing that, or maybe it's just really not the time that you really need to get to where you're going, or they need to get to where they're going. And there's not an opportunity to really say exactly how you're feeling. But if it is somebody you feel safe with, you can, and you do have a moment, you can say something very short if you both need to be somewhere. We're saying like, gosh, honestly, I'm having a really rough morning, and know that I'm really going to need to, take care of myself today. Or maybe if you have time to talk later, I'd really love that. Saying something short like that can be just an authentic way to connect. Lisa, you're saying your mother-in-law lives with you, and it would be great to nap after work before taking her for a walk. Yeah. So yes, being able to fill that, find that opportunity to do so for sure. All right, guys. So we talked about mindfulness, one strategy. I want you to think before we end our time today. We are going to end just a little bit early, but what is something that you guys feel like? I want you to leave thinking about what can you put into practice now? What is a self-care strategy that's feasible, that's short, and that you can do, and you could start now. Some tips would be to set reminders. So to make sure that you do integrate it into your day. And to have someone hold you accountable. So a colleague of mine and I, after I got the shingles, we were talking about this and how we need to practice self-care more. And we decided to hold each other accountable. And my thing was that when I'm in the car, I'm constantly always thinking about work. And so I often listen to podcasts when I'm driving. And I was thinking, gosh, I love doing that. And I love the knowledge. And it's always work-related podcasts. However, it also is just a lot to be in it all the time. And I needed to give myself a break. And so driving is the best time to do that. So I decided, I love Lady Gaga. I especially love the soundtrack from that movie. And of course, I'm always going to blank on it when I try to bring it up. Bradley Cooper, somebody help me out. What was that movie she was in with him? But I love the soundtrack from that movie. And some of the songs can be kind of sad. It's definitely a sad movie. But
A Star is Born.
Or
A Star is Born. A Star is
Born. Thank you. A Star is Born. So I love that movie, and I just love her and her voice. She's doing so many wonderful things right now too with this COVID-19 crisis. But I just think her voice is phenomenal. And so it always just lifts me up. So I listen to Lady Gaga in the car during my commute. And so my friend and I, my colleague, we were holding each other accountable. We would check in and just be like, did you listen to your Lady Gaga today instead of listening to a podcast or NPR? And I would be able to say, yes, I did. And it just made me feel so much better. And her thing was that she wasn't drinking water regularly. So now she was carrying like a big water jug, and she was trying to drink so much water a day. And she set reminders on her phone every hour to drink some water. So we were holding each other accountable for that. So think of something that you can start doing today that may help bring that joy juice, or may help you to take care of yourself. Again, something that's short and that's possible to do. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. All right. So if you guys want to start putting those in the comments, or you can unmute and just share it with the rest of us. Yeah, thank you, Susie. I know. And this is something that's hard because I think that, the authentic connection and really not just generating that generic response of I'm good, how are you? And I notice myself doing it all the time. So again, trying not to be like hard on yourself for that. I think it's just the easiest thing to do, and it's what we're all conditioned to do. But when you can, when you feel safe enough, when you're available to do so, is just trying to have that authentic response and really think like, how am I right now? Am I good? Or am I having a little bit of a hard time? I'm feeling kind of sad or overwhelmed. I know when this COVID-19 crisis started, I had a friend check in with me, and she said, oh gosh, how are you doing? I said, I've been better. This is hard. And she said, are you feeling overwhelmed? And I noticed my gut response. I wanted to say, no, not overwhelmed, just a little, afraid of, getting sick, or my relatives getting sick. But then when I sat with it for a minute, and I thought, I am feeling really overwhelmed. And of course I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm trying to work full time. I have 2 small kids. I'm trying to be a wife. I'm trying to take care of our house, trying to feed everybody. It's a lot. you know, so it's okay to admit that I'm feeling overwhelmed. And so being able to share that with her, and again, have that authentic connection and pause and really touch base with myself, was beneficial in terms of being able to open that door and connect. And then she could felt more comfortable authentically sharing too. And when we have that connection, that authentic connection with people, that's where we can heal, and really experience the benefit of it. So I see some people typing in, so meditation videos, reaching out to friends, videos. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I think he mentioned it during that little clip of some self-care strategies, but somebody shared, like some people like to watch silly videos, and somebody shared with me a video of panda bears sliding down a slide. And he was just talking about how much joy that brings him to watch this. And he shows it for his students just to like if they're just struggling during the day in class, he'll just pop on that video and they all kind of snap out of it and just laugh at these cute little panda bears sliding down a slide. So that can be a form of self-care. Putting on a 5-minute meditation and timer during regular free time on the phone or access during the day. Yep, great. And Lisa, you need to practice some more meditation, like that would relax you. Absolutely. Jamie, setting boundaries and giving permission to take a moment for yourself. Yeah. And Michaela, you started therapy to get it all out because you tend to harbor a lot. Absolutely. I've continued with my therapy too. And I was going to therapy every other week before this started, just as a result of after the whole shingles thing, as a form of self-care. And we're still doing it and doing it through FaceTime. And it's been great. I was a little worried that it would be weird, but it's not. It's actually been really, really great, really beneficial. So wonderful. It sounds like a lot of you have some really good ideas. So on that note, guys, that is the end of our presentation. So thank you so much for being here with me today. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate your participation. And please do reach out if there's anything I can do to help support you. And I'll stick around. So we're a little bit early, but I'll stick around for the next 10 minutes or so. If anybody wants to talk or has any questions, please do feel free to hang out. Otherwise, we're done. So hope you can go enjoy the sunshine a little bit today, and take care of yourselves. Have a good weekend. Thank you, guys.